Welcome, everyone, to the Information's TITV. My name is Akash Pasricha. It is Wednesday, October 8th. We have got a great show planned for you today. We are talking with Coinbase's former chief product officer about his new startup. We've also got the latest on a new longevity-focused conference that is taking over Napa next week. We're also going to do a pulse check on how anxious founders across Silicon Valley right now are feeling right now as talks of a bubble persist. And last but not least, we've got a new funding round about a company that aims to make hiring at tech companies a much more merit-focused process. It's an exciting episode, but I want to start with a discussion about AI profitability. For a lot of AI companies, revenue has grown quickly, and we talked last week on the show about some of the downsides that can come with that. But the other big factor that many startups have to think about right now is profitability, and that is harder to come by for many of these startups. And so to talk about this, I want to bring on Aaron Holmes, our Microsoft reporter, and Ilya Kirnos, partner and CTO at venture fund SignalFire. Welcome to you both. It's great to have you.
Great to be here.
So, Aaron, let's start with you. I want to talk about profitability or in many cases, lack thereof in the AI sector. I mean, we are seeing this challenge persist at all layers of the stack, cloud companies, infrastructure companies, even the application layer companies. How are you seeing this play out in terms of the startups in your orbit and also the larger companies that you cover, the Microsofts and companies like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen that there's definitely an appetite for, AI applications across the board, but the challenge that a lot of these application sellers are running into is how to price them in a way that, have healthy margins. And so I think we've seen struggles among the AI coding software where companies like Cursor and Replit have had to, completely overhaul their oh my God.
Keep it going. We're good. We're good.
It's the
beauty of doing a live show, folks, is that we're all getting used to it. But keep going. So you were talking about the coding companies, Replits, the Cursors. I mean, yeah, their costs are high.
They are, and even like Microsoft GitHub Copilot, which was kind of the first, AI coding tool or AI product in general to take off broadly, it was operating at a loss as of, on each query as of roughly a year ago. And since then, we've heard that they've improved their margins. But I think the issue here is just that, the cost of tokens have been relatively high, and that also relates to the cost of running these applications on GPUs being high. But the refrain that we're hearing is that costs will come down eventually, and that'll give margins some breathing room. So I think a lot of companies are still just waiting to see that happen.
Right. Well, Ilya, I want to come to you. I mean, we've heard this talk about costs coming down. I mean, from what we've reported here at the Information, they kind of are not coming down as quick as some people hoped. And in some cases, I mean, the model costs have kind of plateaued.
Yeah, well, I think what's happening is the capabilities are increasing. So if you look at kind of an older generation model, it is true that generating those tokens is quite a bit cheaper now. But what's happening is, for a lot of these applications, you want to be on the cutting edge on the frontier models to have competitive performance because your competition is on those models. So it's a bit of an arms race. And also, you're using a lot more tokens with these reasoning models that produce a lot more tokens. And so it's a bit of an arms race right now. So, in some ways, yes, older models, token costs are coming down, but you're using more and you're having to be on the bleeding edge, which is expensive. I think the bet for a lot of these companies is eventually kind of things slow down and they're able to sort of take advantage of the hardware improvements and sort of costs will come down for the models that are actually competitive. So that's what we're seeing right now.
Ilya, one of the things that I was talking to another venture capitalist yesterday, and one of the things they mentioned I wanted to ask you about is they said, companies are so focused on getting products out the door right now and shipping products to stay competitive that you have a fixed number of engineers, for example, that are working on these. And if you have a choice between shipping product and then trying to make product profitable and more efficient and optimizing maybe some of the back end, the priority right now is on shipping. Is that the case for startups in your portfolio, in your orbit? I mean, are you seeing startups say, hey, we're not even focused on profitability right now. We just want to get stuff out the door?
So I would say, there's a difference between profitability and unit economics, gross margins, right? If, it's certainly true that most startups are not profitable, right? You're actively, aggressively investing in growth. But the question is, are you selling dollars for 80 cents or maybe 14 cents or whatever? I do think right now, kind of the moment in time is such that a lot of founders believe that they need to get out there, grab market share, and then optimize later. And I would say for a lot of companies, that makes a lot of sense. If you're an enterprise company selling, 100K plus deals, I don't think the token costs are going to be the thing that makes the difference between having, a great profitable business in the future, because the model costs are actually probably a small component of the overall cost. Right. But, if you're more of a consumer company or a prosumer company, like a Cursor that's charging $20 a month to a lot of people. And what's funny there is, I can be paying $20 a month and using a lot of Cursor, or I using it very sparingly. And yet we both pay the same amount. I know they have tiers now, et cetera. But I think a lot of it also comes down to pricing, because their underlying costs are per token, and yet they're kind of the price they're charging the consumer is a flat fee.
Right.
What we're seeing is this mismatch. And I think they're also, even at the higher tiers, you probably have rate limits and caps to what you can use because of this nature. I think at some point they probably introduce usage-based pricing. Right now they're going for simplicity in pricing because that's what gets market share. And that's what kind of people have become used to, frankly.
So what I hear you saying is you're kind of more in the camp of actually the CEO of Replit who came on the show. He was talking about pricing a lot, and he was saying, look, costs, I mean, they might not come down the way people expect. We have to adjust our pricing to reflect the value that we think people are getting out of our services, and then also a way to actually become profitable in the long run. It seems like that's sort of the camp that you're in.
Yeah, I would say it really depends on the application. I think coding is a good example of where every improvement to a frontier model is something developers want to use, right? So if you're a Replit, you need to be on the best, smartest model. Otherwise, you're going to lose developers.
Right.
In another application, like let's say you're creating marketing copy for websites or something, I don't think that you need to be on the bleeding edge for those kind of applications. And you're probably more willing to optimize for cost in that equation. So it depends on the domain is what I would say.
Right. Aaron, I want to come back to you. As it relates to quality of revenue, we had this discussion last week on the show about a lot of deals that application layer companies sign with enterprises. I mean, it's not always the stickiest revenue in some cases. How much of a concern is that among some of the companies that you're talking to?
Yeah, I mean, I think like what we've heard from those companies is, we can pass on some of these costs to our customers because they are getting even more savings from using our products, often by like automating away roles. At the same time, yeah, there's a lot of AI startups that have reported revenue that might not be as recurring as they would hope. And so I think like the question is how sticky these apps become. I think another big question that a lot of these companies are facing is, if my software automates away certain roles and companies, the headcount of the customers goes down over time, how do you price that into your model? Which I think is also just kind of an untested question that a lot of these startups are trying to figure out right now.
Right. Great. Well, I want to thank you both for coming on. It is a topic that we seem to talk about more and more on this show, and I anticipate it will get even more important. Ilya and Aaron, thank you for coming on the show. That is Ilya from SignalFire and Aaron Holmes, our Microsoft reporter, and also a reporter on all things enterprise software here at The Information.
Thank you.
Being the chief product officer for a company as big as Coinbase is the dream job for many people across the valley. But in 2023, our next guest left that role and quickly started a company focused on AI agents. Now, I will say the jokes about a crypto executive pivoting to AI basically write themselves. But I want to bring on Surojit Chatterjee, the founder and CEO of AI agents company, Ema. Ema, we're going to get clarification from him on how to pronounce that. He's coming on the show for his first time. Surojit, welcome to the show. It's great to have you.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Is it Ema? Is it Ema? Just correct.
It's actually an acronym. Enterprise Machine Assistant, EMA.
What was it?
Enterprise Machine Assistant, EMA. And
okay.
Pronounced as Ema, not Ema.
Well, Enterprise sounds like an agent to me, right? I mean, that seems to be what it's all about. Very quickly, talk to me about what EMA does, and then we'll talk a little bit more about agents at large.
Yeah. So we call Ema. So it's Enterprise Machine Assistant, but it's pronounced as Ema. what we do, our goal was to build an universal AI employee, and we think we have built the first universal AI employee. So it just doesn't answer questions in the enterprise. It actually takes actions, dynamically plans, understands enterprise context, reasons over all kinds of structured and unstructured data, connects to all your legacy systems, take end-to-end kind of entire workflow automation. That's what Ema does. We have pre-built AI employees for functions like customer support, HR, sales, but our customers can also take the framework, take the platform, and build their own AI employees, which are essentially multi-agent workflows. Right.
So
and all of this while maintaining enterprise compliance, security, high standards of deployment flexibility, and so forth.
Right. So we've been talking about agents this week, of course, with OpenAI's Dev Day that happened earlier on Monday. And the question really becomes, as these larger AI companies like OpenAI unveil tools that make it easier for people to create their own agents, what happens to startups like yours and other companies that are sort of pitching these agents to help companies streamline their operations? How is what you're building different than what OpenAI is pitching their own customers, saying, hey, you can build it yourself?
Absolutely. So look, OpenAI continues to increase the overall Overton window of what's the art of the possible. But from there to actually getting a deployable enterprise software, enterprise automation software that works is a long path. What we have been able to achieve is actually making enterprise automation really simple for our enterprise users. Subject matter experts, they don't need to have a degree in machine learning, an engineer. They can just come and conversationally build brand new complex workflows, agentic workflows that can connect to their entire set of systems of records, their data sets, their databases, and dynamically plan and take actions. That's the difference, where taking something that's possible to actually making it work at enterprise scale.
How do you think about pricing to ensure that the unit economics of your business is going to be profitable in the long run?
Absolutely. Look, we price everything based on usage or outcome, not based on seat, which is like popular pricing scheme for SaaS applications. In fact, I think most SaaS applications today or systems of records are facing a disruption because of that, because most of the seats are unused, underutilized, right? Everything is based on outcome, based on usage, and based on the value we are creating for the customer. Every sale we do is based on kind of actual improving the ROI. And our customers are largest of enterprises, customers like Hitachi, customers like KPMG, largest pharmacy benefit management company in the US, and so on.
And so how have your gross margins fared then with these large contracts for these agents that you're selling them?
Very well. Look, we are not.
Are we talking like traditional gross margins, 70, 80% type of neighborhood, or give us a ballpark here?
It's traditional gross margins, and we are able to achieve that because we are not in the business of building large foundational models. We are building smaller models. We are leveraging all models. In fact, we have developed homegrown technology that we call Ema Fusion, which is a model of models. It's a meta model that sits on top of every model out there, 100 plus LLMs, dynamically optimizes every enterprise task and how it executes those tasks. And we have proven that it's like 1/20th the cost for kind of typical enterprise benchmarks, and with a higher accuracy than most models out there. It basically leverages everything out there.
So you've been able to reduce your cost base by using this model of models sort of technology that you've built. Got it. Well, Surojit, it is a fascinating space. I mean, agents have certainly become the thing that everyone loves to talk about, and I appreciate you talking candidly about profitability, because it is something that we are really trying to wrap our hands around on this show. Thank you for coming on. That is Surojit Chatterjee. He is the CEO and founder of Ema, a new agents-focused AI company.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, we spoke yesterday about how longevity and consumer health is the latest craze in tech. And next week, there is a big conference in Napa on this exact topic that our next guests are starting. Dr. Jordan Shlain is a longtime concierge doctor and the founder of Private Medical. And John Battelle is a longtime media entrepreneur. The two of them founded Doc, the name of the event. And I want to bring them on to talk more about where they see this longevity movement going. John and Jordan, it's great to have you.
Good to be here. Thanks for
how you doing?
us.
I'm doing great. Well, I'm excited for this fun conversation. Look, the place I want to start is, I mean, John, you're a media entrepreneur. Jordan, you've been a doctor. I mean, how did you guys even meet in the first place and decide to start this thing?
John?
Well, Jordan and I have known each other for almost 25 years. As a matter of fact, I worked with his sister on, of all things, the Webbies, which you might remember back in the first .com.
Five-word acceptance speeches, right?
Yes.
That's right.
Right.
That was Tiffany, Jordan's sister. But Jordan and I have been friends a long time. He was my doctor for 10 or 15 years till I moved to the East Coast, and I hooked up with one of his doctors out in New York. But he and I have always traded notes and done a bunch of whiteboard sessions on problems I was starting companies and problems he was having with his business, scaling his private medical business. And that ended up about 2 years ago with us realizing we wanted to do something together, and that was Doc.
There you go.
And it started with me as I was at an event in Las Vegas with a longtime entrepreneur, Kevin Ryan, and we were lamenting how these healthcare conferences were just so commercial and so lacking in evidence that they weren't really healthcare events. They were more, kind of performative commercial events. And now if you go to an academic event, they're so inscrutable and hard to understand. So people don't go to those. But when you go to these big commercial events, you're not really learning anything about healthcare. It's like, what can you buy? And so Kevin challenged me and said, hey, Jordan, if you could invent something out of whole cloth, like what event would you go to? And I said, I don't know. Let me think about that. And kind of then I called John. I'm like, can we whiteboard a little bit on this idea of how do we put something together that's both academic, but it's also ready-made for people to understand, focuses on longevity, and really addresses the innovations that are happening right now. There's so much noise in the market.
And I do want to talk about that noise because, and I want to stick with you because you're the doctor out of the three of us. So maybe you can shed some light here. There's been so much conversation around longevity in the last 2 to 3 years specifically. And, we've got the bands, we've got the rings, we've got the documentaries now that are coming out. And the question I have for you is this a result of any particular scientific or medical breakthroughs that we've had in the last 3 years? Or is it really just the thing that has captured the zeitgeist right now that people are kind of rallying around?
Great question. I think there's a lot of factors that kind of all come into it. One is, let's take COVID just for a quick example. At one point in COVID, we all, whether we recognize it or not, thought maybe we were going to die or somebody we knew was going to die. So we all confronted mortality or the specter of mortality for a minute or maybe longer. So we also appreciated that those who were healthy during that COVID episode were the ones who actually made it out alive and didn't get that sick. So there is this piece of the longevity movement that we are now thinking about living healthier and longer. Number one. Number two is there's billions of dollars of research over very long periods of time that are finally coming to fruition in terms of the biomedical research on whether it's CRISPR or proteomics or metabolomics. We're starting to understand biology more. And that leads into the third thing with this technology, which is the ability for compute to come into the fore. And so, but that's part of the problem too, is everybody thinks this is an engineering, longevity is an engineering problem. And I would say that the technology is eclipsed the biomedical industry as the sexy hot thing right now, which is as it should.
Right, because everything biotech takes so much time, right? Longevity is I can control this here and now, and so I certainly see why it's caught on. You were going to say something. I'm going to come back to you, John, but what were you going to say?
Yeah, I was just going to say that longevity isn't a technology problem, it's a human problem. And what you need is technology and scientists and physicians to all come together. And this is not bring a bunch of engineers and solve the longevity problem.
Right.
And I think that what we're trying to do at Doc is to bring together a community of technology, medicine, science, media and really try to like, how do we bring science back into something that we all respect? Because if people are anti-science or science skeptics, I just say, how about that cell phone? You like that cell phone? That's science, right? I mean, your car, that's science.
Right.
So how can we be anti-science?
So, John, the headline of the conference that you guys are putting on, it really surrounds this question: when, if ever, will AI replace doctors? And it's the question that's on the website. Yeah. And so we should be asking the doctor these questions, but John, I'll come to you. What do you think? I mean, when, if ever, will AI replace doctors?
We're opening the conference on Sunday night with that question that is going to be debated both by physicians, and Jordan is the moderator of that debate, and by technologists, including Reid Hoffman and Mike Krieger, who's the co-founder of Instagram and the product officer at Anthropic. Is probably the whole audience knows both those names well. It is a way of forcing and framing a conversation about the role of technology in medicine and healthcare. Right. And I don't want to, call the debate before it happens, but it's going to be a really interesting conversation. It will frame the next couple of days where we talk about a lot of the issues of how technology impacts medicine. Right. And also, back to Jordan's point, how we can get a narrative, supported that is about, a true north of science and evidence as opposed to claims and marketing, which is what, we're seeing a hype cycle in medicine that feels very similar to the hype cycles we're all familiar with in technology. But we're talking about people's lives here. So I think we need to take it more seriously. Right.
Jordan, is the goal with Doc to offer longevity-focused therapies? And in the long run, where do you see this business going?
The long-term goal is to showcase, like there's so much, like I said, John said, there's so much noise out there. A podcaster, a celebrity healthcare podcaster has more influence over people's health than the scientist that's developing and delivering these solutions. So we're trying to highlight what's real, what works, what's here now, and try to create a community that will understand those things and promote those, because as John mentioned, and kind of one of the premises for this event is great marketing on top of shitty science will always beat, shitty marketing on top of great science. And so part of what we're trying to do with John's help and his understanding of media is how do we market science in a way, great science, because most scientists don't want fame. They just wanted to tackle a hard problem, and they spend their whole life trying to solve one thing. And if some doctor does that, or some scientist does that, that benefits everybody, but they're drowned out because of peptides, the peptide circus, then we lose. And so we want to try to elevate and make scientists the cool cats again.
And so I mean, John, let's come back to you. You've started so many media companies. What is the business plan here for 3 to 5 years for Doc in making these scientists the cool kids in town?
Well, there will definitely be more robust media coming from Doc over the next few years, but we have greater ambitions than that. As someone who started a bunch of media companies, very few get to the point where the information has gotten. It's not easy. And we know that there are other ways to to execute the mission of supporting great science. So we'll definitely be doing media about great science, but we're going to be also creating a platform. We'll be making some announcements about that later in the year. So stay tuned.
Great. Well, we'll have to have you both on later in the year when you make those announcements. Best of luck with the conference next week. It's an exciting topic, and I'm excited to see what the output of those conversations are, not the least of which is that debate on Sunday night. You both got to come back on and tell us what. Yep, Jordan, you're about to say something.
One last thing that's a spoiler alert, kind of, not really, is at our debate, we are going to have Claude and Claudine on the debate stage.
Okay.
So we are going to have AI participate in this debate.
Okay, there you go. Well, send us some clips then. We'll put the clips on the show. Maybe I think that's. I'm excited, and we'll have to tune in to the live stream if there is one. I know that tickets are probably pretty expensive, so you're probably not doing that just yet. But thank you again to the both of you for coming on. That is John and Jordan, the co-founders of Doc, the new conference that is sweeping through Napa next week. Okay. Well, There is no question that the past few weeks have started to feel like that things are getting very frothy in the technology sector. And back in August, we published a great story in The Information about how that has actually caused a lot of anxiety for founders and startups as they grapple with more competition than ever. I want to bring on Todd Olson, the founder and CEO of Pendo, a data analytics company he started back in 2014. He has been watching this exact dynamic play out very closely, and I want to bring him on to the show to talk about it. Todd, it's great to see you again.
Well, thanks for having me. It's great to be here, Akash.
Well, I should say, the genesis of this segment was you and I met last night at the First Mark Capital Founders Dinner at the New York Stock Exchange, and we sort of hit it off talking about the current moment for founders and startups. And the question I asked you last night was, I said, how's it going? What's the vibe? And that question really came out of the story that we published, which is that people are so anxious right now, just given the stakes and the pace of technological innovation. And I found your answer pretty insightful. And so I'm going to ask you again, what's the vibe? How are people feeling around you in your world right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's intense. I mean, it's a really, really different time, and I think, we talked about the word anxiety or anxious, and there's zero question. It's one of the most anxious times I've sort of felt in the company's history, and certainly in recent history, and if you kind of like look back across, the last few years, you had obviously 2021, which you sort of had this peak moment within, peak tech IPOs. You had significant funding. You had one round after another, and then 22. There's a lot of change, like a lot of change. Obviously, the market, corrected. A lot of valuations / multiples sort of compressed. They came down, and I think at the time, look, we all adjusted.
Right.
We all adjusted, and we're like, yeah, we'll see how next year goes. Next year, I'm sure this thing will be a little bit better. And then you get to next year, it's 2022. And you're like, the next year will be a little better. And, kind of fast forward, now we're in 2025 and the market is frothy again. It's as frothy. You could argue it's even frothier than it was in, say, 2021. But it's different because it's basically driven by AI. And so It's different than it was in 2021. And so if you're a company that was hot in 2021, you're kind of like, how do I get on that? And one way of thinking it, we're all running races, and we can be doing really well in our race, but then we see another race going on next door, and we're like, I want to be in that race.
Yeah,
and I think a lot of folks are looking at refounding moments. You hear terms like that, or
reinventing their, what is the AI angle to my company? I mean, my question for you is, as you just said, you're running your race, you're paying attention to the other races that other companies are running. I mean, have we sort of forgot about the fundamentals of how to build a business properly in some cases as startups? Because, I mean, at the core of it, you got to be solving a problem, right? And we talk about it on the show. So many of these enterprise software businesses, especially the big ones, right? Their products are kind of converging a bit. Everybody has an agent that is going to do pretty much the same thing or some variation of the same thing. I mean, I think we've lost sight of what the problem is we're trying to solve.
Yeah, look, I mean, I do think it's all going to come down to fundamentals. And are you solving a hard problem? Are you doing it well? Is there high quality? I think just because you can vibe code a solution in like 2 weeks doesn't mean it's actually going to meet needs. And then even, if you go back to earlier this week, the OpenAI announcement, folks were asked on stage around what opportunities exist. And I think the answer was something around, boring enterprise stuff, and the truth is a lot of companies like us have been building for over 10 years. Like, we've built most of the boring enterprise stuff. And guess what? When you talk to large enterprises, yes, while people are experimenting with AI, they're using it, there's different levels of maturity, and they still need a company that understands how to work with large businesses. And I think ultimately there's still tons of opportunity in the market. I think there's definitely going to be probably a convergence of some of the large existing incumbents out there and some of these frothy new startups, because and that could either be M&A, it could be other, it could be innovation. But I do think that the reason it's anxious is that we all feel like we should be doing a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we could be doing really well. Like I feel like we're doing pretty well, to be quite honest. And I'm told by third parties we're doing well. But then I'll see something on the news where, again, they go back to the OpenAI announcement this week.
Anthropic does this big deal with IBM or with Deloitte. It's like,
Yeah, it's easy to have even more imposter syndrome than, and even for like successful businesses, because one could argue we're a successful business here, we're nearly 100 employees, and we have real revenue and we have real customers. So I think that's the state of the world right now. And as I tell my team, I'd kind of rather be anxious and intense than just kind of like chilling and relaxing and then wake up one day and have like the whole world change out from underneath of us.
Right. I want to ask you one question quickly about your business. So Pendo is in the business of data analytics, and you sort of help companies study how their various different softwares are being used across their company. And that gives you kind of an interesting perspective as to how usage of software has been changing over the past few years with AI. Have you noticed anything about, this theory around, hey, people are going to start to vibe code their own software. They're going to start to buy enterprise software less. Usage is going to go down. I mean, you studied this. That is the name of your business. Are you seeing software use come down in the era of AI?
No. So far, no. We're not. We do measure over 1 billion people using software on a daily basis, and no, software usage is not down. Actually, our numbers continue to go up. Now,
why do you think that is?
Because I think people are deploying AI predominantly to get more productivity and efficiency out of their existing employees. And while, you read about layoffs and other things, I don't think mass people have been replaced quite yet. So I think it's more been an assistant / co-pilot than it has been like, truly autonomously replacing activities. Now I will say it's not quite growing and at the pace, and more importantly, our customers are not forecasting as much growth that they would have in the future. Say take 2020, 2021, people were forecasting significant growth out of ahead. Now everyone's a little bit nervous and uncertain of like how much growth can we forecast out in the future. So we are seeing that change. That's more of a prediction of the future than it is a reflection of reality. So no, I don't think we're seeing a lot of change. Now, how people use software is changing. And, I think people obviously are like enjoying a more conversational way, like asking the software to do things. So I think what they're doing in software is changing. But that to me just creates new opportunities and to really make that better.
And importantly, so you're saying here that the forecasting of, hey, I'm going to increase my seat count, or I'm going to buy more software, that growth rate has started to decline a bit or started to decelerate.
That's what we're seeing. I'd say we're seeing people being much more conservative in planning, where in the past they were more aggressive. And we don't charge on seats, but a lot of our customers do. So that's kind of like, we're looking more at the industry approach than it is. Yeah.
But one of the questions I want to ask you then is people have talked about the core reason behind that. That's something we've heard from the industry at large. Is that because headcounts are not growing as quickly? Is that because CEOs are just not, or people in charge of buying the software, they're not spending as much time, with these old school softwares? They're looking more at AI. What are the core reasons for that, do you think?
Okay, I definitely think that in general, people are more conservative on headcount growth. Like people are double asking, do we really need this additional head when we have AI? And again, it's come down to some of the anxiety. We see other companies doing something. Why can't I get those returns? So I go back to my leaders who think they need heads for certain problems. I'm like, hey, no, I just read that OpenAI is doing this. Like, why can't we do this? And they'll say, well, they're architected different. Like, no, go check again. So I now, does that mean we won't eventually hire that head? We may. We very well may. I'm just going to say that bar is a much higher bar than it's ever been before in history. And but yeah, it'll be interesting to see where it plays out. So like, I think we're in this period of flux where there's just so much change. People are taking a little more of a wait and see approach. So
great. Well, Todd, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was great seeing you last night and great seeing you on the show today. That is Todd Olson, the founder and CEO of Pendo here on TITV. Okay, well, for our final segment, hiring good talent has become a bit of a mess these days as AI job postings and AI resumes have swept through the recruiting landscape. Our next guest says that they have a solution to finding better talent more reliably. MeritFirst is a hiring-focused startup that has raised more than $6 million today in a seed funding round. And here to talk about their approach is Zach, the co-founder and CEO of the company. Zach, it's great to see you. Welcome to TITV.
Hey, thanks so much for having me on.
I already mispronounced the name of another startup that we had on the show, and so I wasn't about to take a chance on mispronouncing your last name. What is your last name? How do you say it?
It's Ganieany.
Ganieany. Okay, there you go. Well, I wouldn't have guessed that from the pronunciation.
No,
from the
no one
spelling.
gets it right. So,
what does MeritFirst do? Give us the overview.
yeah, I mean, I think you hit on it well up front that the hiring process is pretty busted today, where you're seeing a lot of frustration on both ends. Companies don't have a ton of conviction in the hires that they're making. They're missing out on great talent because they're relying on these, pretty poor and outdated proxies for evaluating talent. That's resumes and credentials. The flip side of that, we're seeing candidates get fatigued across the board, just kind of getting lost in the resume shuffle. What we're doing is taking, almost a unique approach. It really shouldn't be a unique approach, but kind of taking a step back and saying, hey, the right way to hire is actually validating for yourself that someone can do the work that they say they can do. And the right way to do that is through, some form of assessment. So whether that's a standardized assessment, a take-home assessment, getting folks doing actual real work product so you can see the work that they can do.
Got it. And do you guys have customers yet that are using this for their hiring?
Yeah, we have several customers now. Anything from early stage startups to we have a funeral home using the product right now. The need for strong talent in your company isn't something that's siloed in Silicon Valley. We see interest from companies across the board.
And how do you actually assess that the candidate that a company has hired is a good candidate? Conceivably, there has to be some system of tracking that employee's productivity down the line, doing surveys for you to say, hey, did this work out? Did our system lead to a better outcome than if you had used LinkedIn? How do you track that?
Yeah, I think that what that looks like is really staying close to our customers, getting an understanding of how these hires turned out down the line, like you said, 30, 60, 90 days. And we do that by just doing just that, staying close to them and asking for feedback on the hires that they make. What's unique about our process is, we are trying to steer away from proxies as much as we can. And I think what that looks like is getting as close to the real work that someone would actually do if they're in the seat. And so most of the assessments that we see on our platform are some form of actual exercise that person could encounter in the seat. And so that's, still a proxy to some extent, but much closer than just, the resume and kind of credential screen.
And what's a sample assessment that you run?
Yeah, I mean, an example question could be something like you work for a labor marketplace, you're going to set up a new vertical, you're going to go find plumbers to staff. What's your hypotheses? What are the experiments you run? At what point do you decide go and no go? And so you're really trying to dig into kind of problem solving ability, how they make decisions, and in this kind of open-ended, ambiguous environment, right? Because so much of the work that you do in the real world, there's no right or wrong answer. It's just navigating ambiguity and kind of pushing in the right direction and then having to make those trade-offs on when you decide to double down and back off.
So that would be like a strategy focused role, I imagine. And so for an engineering role that you're helping to find a candidate based on merit, you would ask them to actually deliver on, you would say, hey, build this essentially.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we see in a lot of the take homes is, here's a project, go off and actually build this. And we, kind of keep it open where people actually have to make assumptions, make decisions. And then you can really understand someone's thought process. What are the kind of elements of the project that they prioritize? What do they find most important? And you're really getting a closer look at how this person would operate in the seat.
Right. And the company pays you based on successful hires or just for running the hiring process at all?
Right now, just a platform fee is our pricing model, and so similar to what you pay your kind of ATS partners, we view this as a software product, and then as we continue to scale the business, we'll be able to make matches for companies based on the roles that they're looking for, and just the candidates that we have. So
let's zoom out here a little bit. What is sort of the future that you envision here for companies hiring for roles? I mean, I look at people, dropping out of college and, becoming very successful entrepreneurs. I look at people questioning, hey, do I even need to go to college to get a role, right? Is the idea here to replace higher education as a vehicle for training people to do things? Is it sort of integrating with higher education and teaching people how to build things more? Is this for later career hires? How do you think about that?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I don't think we see ourselves as replacing higher education. I think with the internet and now even more so with AI, there are there are many ways to kind of figure out how to, learn a certain skill set. And so fast forward, the ideal outcome for us is companies are no longer screening candidates based on arbitrary, logos or years experience. You can actually open up the funnel super wide, give anyone a fair shot who wants to show what they can do, and then ultimately get the best person in the seat, irrespective of background.
Last question for you. Has AI been a blessing or a curse for hiring?
It's a good question. I think,
you got to pick one. That's we got to end it on this.
I mean, I think it's been a blessing. I think people, you want people that are high performers and they can, move quickly and affect change throughout the organization. Overall, it's a blessing. There's just some nuance that you got to sort through when you're evaluating that talent.
But MeritFirst is trying to tackle the curse part of it.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, then I would say maybe you think of it more as a curse, but I hear you. I'm not going to put words in your mouth. It's a really fascinating business. Thank you so much, Zach, for coming on the show. I look forward to seeing how it evolves and who else you end up signing on with and testing. Gosh, I want to see more of these deliverables. Maybe we can have a couple of the candidates on the show to talk about what they've built. That is Zach Ganieany, the co-founder and CEO of MeritFirst here on TITV. That does it for today's show. A reminder, we are on this stream Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. I want to thank Amazon Web Services, who is our presenting sponsor for this production. And I want to thank you for tuning in. We really do appreciate your viewership. I am already excited for our next show tomorrow. And so until then, thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye for now.